that everyone should have a consent button to check on to say that they allow themselves to be recorded in order to hear the audio going forward. So then great. What I was saying beforehand is first welcome to the webinar around the Pearl discussion, the participatory evaluation of aging with rapamycin in longevity. This discussion will be focusing on some of the primary and secondary endpoints that we'll be utilizing to measure the success and safety of the study, as well as some of the vendors that we're utilizing, primarily DexaFit, which we have Adam joining the call. Anyone who signs up for this discussion or has signed up for the Eventbrite will get access to this recording, the Q&A that follows up after this discussion, links to the previous webinars that go over what is Pearl, what is a compounding pharmacy, how are we able to be producing a virtual trial during a pandemic, and a little bit of discussions around AgelessRx itself. To go ahead and get started, my name is Carlos Martin. I'm one of the research directors over at AgelessRx, and we're focusing on performing the success of the Pearl study, as well as a couple of studies for long COVID and other observational trials using the products that AgelessRx prescribes routinely. From AgelessRx, we also have Dr. Sajad Zalzala, who is one of the co-founders, as well as one of the primary care physicians for AgelessRx, who does have the capabilities of pretty much prescribing for every state in the United States of America, which is kind of one of the first steps you need to have handy if you're doing a virtual study. Dr. Zalzala, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and give a bit of background on AgelessRx?
Sure. So my name is Sajad Zalzala, Dr. Z for short. I think probably most of you are familiar with AgelessRx by now, but for those who are maybe joining the webinar for the first time, so I co-founded AgelessRx. We launched back in October of 2019. Our vision was then and still is to be kind of the platform for longevity, to help people live longer and healthier. We started out by offering, metformin prescriptions off-label for its benefits to help extend health span, not necessarily lifespan, but health span, with the hope that as more and more therapies are discovered and researched, they will be able to start offering those. We're in the process of exploring various different lab tools and other types of forms of measurements as well to help kind of guide patients towards a path of better health and longevity. Part of that vision and mission involves research, clinical trials, and we thanks to the help of Carlo, we've been able to kind of move that research part forward. And starting with our flagship research project, the rapamycin Pearl trial, we have a few other smaller ones that we're working on as well, and we hope that this will just be the beginning of a long ongoing trial of sorts to help develop new therapies or to repurpose existing therapies, as well as combinations of therapies as well. Was that a good enough intro for you, Carlo?
Yeah, no, I think that covers all the bases. And
sure.
Once again, we have a number of other recordings that go further into Ageless, a bit more into the Pearl study. I think most participants on this discussion have either heard about the consent procedure, has seen some of the discussions around consent. So we have recordings to kind of give you any flavor what you have to learn more about the Pearl discussion. And kind of moving on along, we're opening up this floor also to Adam from DexaFit as one of an interesting factor as a primary endpoint for what we're intending to measure to showcase success and potential efficacy of rapamycin used in longevity. DexaFit itself is designed to transform a cumbersome, outdated, and sometimes very confusing process of traditional healthcare, and offers very simple, easy to access, minimally invasive technology that provides actual insights that users can learn what they need to do or what options are available to optimize themselves. And instead of stalling and thinking about what I can remember about DexaFit, Adam, do you want to go ahead and plug in here? And
you did great. No, thanks, Carlo. That's a great intro. Hello, everybody. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, DexaFit, how we originally started about 10 years ago as a high-end performance lab for everyday people. I actually come from a sports performance background and partnered with an old teammate of mine and an old medical doctor. And we wanted to democratize access to the type of testing that was available to elite athletes across most professional organizations and top level college programs. So that's how we originally opened up, and utilizing Dexa technology. For those who aren't familiar with it, Dexa specifically is a bone densitometer. It's been used for decades to diagnose osteoporosis, but it's also considered the gold standard for body composition assessments. It sets it apart from other methods is how it breaks down your lean mass, fat mass, bone mass, and specifically your visceral fat, which is one of the more important features of a DEXA scan. So that's when we first opened, these weren't very accessible. And our mission since that day has been to make them more available and more affordable for people to get access to this type of information. That's very valuable when it comes to your preventative health risks, alongside additional testing that we offer, from VO2 max testing, resting metabolic rate testing, as well as lab testing.
And perfect. So I think one of the things I like to prioritize is really discussing why DexaFit, and specifically the DXA body scan, is so imperative for the rapamycin study. And Dr. Zalzala, if I can highlight why visceral fat and body composition was primary endpoint. First, thinking we're doing a longevity study that's only in a 1-year time frame. What are the benefits of using these surrogate endpoints? And then Adam, I'd love to hear a bit more about the technology itself once we kind of get understanding of the link between rapamycin and the DexaFit system.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I was able to put together a few slides. I thought Adam would have a few slides for us, but he wasn't able to make it in front of his computer for this call, so I had to improvise a little bit. So are you able to see the screen that I'm sharing here?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So so this is a little slide that Adam had sent me in terms of just kind of an overview of DexaFit. Talking about the Dexa body scan. Providing body composition, and then they also provide other services as well that we won't necessarily go into today unless you want to. That has to do with metabolic health, RMR, resting metabolic rate, and the VO2 max, which kind of as a measure of your oxygen utilization and efficiency to measure your general fitness. Now, a lot of people ask, like, I've had a few people ask, I've already had a bone density done, or I've already had a DEXA scan done. Can we use it for the study? And usually, if it's a test that was ordered by your physician for screening for bone density, then it's the same equipment but a different test. Adam, did you want to talk a little bit about the difference between just a standard bone density and body composition?
Sure. So for most use cases, traditionally, Dexa has been used for a site-specific bone density scan. The most common test is the dual femur or the AP spine. And so that's a very regional analysis, and that's usually used to determine your risk for osteoporosis, or whether or not you have osteopenia, which is low bone mass, usually the stage before osteoporosis. It's typically recommended for females, especially over the age of 55, 60. But as I mentioned earlier, in recent decades, Dexa has become the gold standard for body composition assessments, specifically because of the body composition distribution analysis that it's able to provide. It's pretty much used in most medical research that's looking at metabolic health or body composition health. So the main reason why you can't use previous DEXA scan is, unless it was a total body composition scan, that requires a different type of software in order to get the breakdown of total body lean mass, fat mass, and bone mass, and the visceral fat, which is not available on every system.
So then
does that help?
Yeah, it's at least catching up that there's a number of systems already on the ground, but they're not all able to look at the same endpoints that we're prioritizing. So due to that, we have to kind of be a bit selective with where we route participants in this virtual study. So just because if you find one down the road doesn't mean it's one that is suited for first the analysis and the whole gestalt body composition that we're looking for. Adam, is that kind of a fair assessment?
It is. Not every system is going to be compatible with a total body composition scan.
what did you say makes them different? I mean, why can't somebody just use a standard bone density DEXA scanner?
Well, it's mainly at the facility. Most facilities that are, if they did it for bone density screening, may not have the body composition software feature, and they might not do the actual total body. So when they do a site specific, they're usually looking specifically at one region or two regions localized in the body, and it's not going to do a full scan of your total body to get the lean mass breakdown of your left side versus your right side, your limbs, your left arm, your right arm, your left leg, your right leg, your visceral fat stored around your organs, things like that. So the bone density specific one, as I said earlier, will just be very localized. That doesn't mean that where you got your scan done, they may not be able to offer body composition assessments. It's just something that you would need to verify.
So basically all body composition scanners are DEXA scanners, but not all DEXA scanners have the capability, the software capability. It's not a hardware issue; it's a software issue.
Most of the time it's just a software issue. There are some versions of DEXA systems that are only bone density specific, so the hardware will not actually allow you to do a body composition scan.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks for clarification. And then, I don't know if you see I don't know if you see the slides or not, but I have the DexaFit and chronic disease, how DexaFit is trying to, use body composition to, and machine learning and things like that to try to detect diabetes or risk factors for diabetes early on. I have a slide up that talks about Fit Freddy, Weight Loss Wendy, Lean Larry, and Health Seeker Sam. Can you talk a little bit more about like what some of the work that you're doing there?
Oh, yeah. So over the years, we've collected a lot of data, specifically not just DEXA data about people's body composition health, but also their breath by breath, which from a cardiopulmonary exercise test, CPET system. So that's your VO2 max test in layperson's terms. By using that analysis combined with the DEXA, along with some general health history information and some lab work, we have successfully been able to, from a DEXA scan alone, predict somebody's likelihood of having type 2 diabetes or their pre-diabetic state as well.
Cool. All right. And then do you want to talk a little bit about, visceral fat? What's the importance of visceral fat? How it's measured by DEXA scan?
Of course. So visceral fat, I like to call visceral fat the canary in the coal mine. So to give you, I'll give an example of, I've done thousands of scans in my day, and one day in particular jumps out to me. It was two gentlemen came in almost back to back on a Saturday. And one of these gentlemen was very, very fit. Anybody looking at him would be like, yeah, that guy's in good shape. More importantly, if you talk to him, he knew what he was talking about. His diet was dialed in, his fitness routine was great. You could just see that he was a very healthy person. And his DEXA scan came back great. He was it was about 10% body fat, just really good on a DEXA scanner, 0 pounds of visceral fat. His skeletal health, his T-score, T-score, to those that don't know, that's kind of just a quick metric to identify how healthy your bone mass is relative to a healthy adult. So his T-score was great, perfect, almost symmetry between his left and right side. If this guy provided you recommendations, you'd want to listen to him. Two or three appointments later, another guy comes in. He's also 9-10% body fat. So again, on the surface, this is where total body fat percent as a metric by itself can be very misleading. This guy, if you see him at the gym, 9 or 10% tells you he's 9 or 10% body fat. Sounds like he's in pretty good shape. Must be pretty healthy. Well, visceral fat tells another story. So that's where I say it's the canary in the coal mine. This gentleman had around 3.5 pounds of visceral fat. So think just you have your organs. They're not supposed to be layered in fat. Usually when that happens, it's a sign of something underlying, some underlying condition is causing that. And that's where you want to pay close attention to that, as that is a signal that something might be going down in the future, adverse to your health. Along with the high visceral fat, his lean mass was not very, you could just tell he was more of a skinny fat. His T-score was also not in the great healthy range considering his age. So these are again, the difference of understanding your body composition distribution versus just a total body fat percent number alone. But as I said, more importantly, your visceral fat, which has been found in medical research as a leading cause of all-cause mortality, from cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, and even some cancers.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
That is this how you arrived at the visceral fat as an endpoint for the study?
I could take that one. No, actually, so when we were looking at a clinical endpoint for the study, I mean, we looked around to kind of figure out what we could use that would be kind of accepted by the medical community. Usually you look for some kind of outcomes, some kind of clinical outcomes, and so Dr. Watson, he had done our principal investigator on the study. He had actually done a small scale rapamycin trial. It's still pending publication. There's some lab tests and things like that he still hasn't worked out yet. But one thing that kind of shined through in terms of like a pattern that he noticed was a decrease in visceral body fat. So there's two reasons. First of all, because we have some data to suggest or to indicate that we actually will see some changes or improvements in the visceral fat. And the other thing, improvement in visceral fat, I guess is kind of on par with like a reduction in your LDL levels, for example. Like when somebody's studying a cholesterol medication, one of the endpoints is reduction in LDL, or like, for diabetes medication, reduction in glucose. So that's why we chose visceral fat, because we weren't sure exactly what to expect in terms of blood work. But we did know that, or we did have some clues that visceral fat would be positively affected. And that's no small feat too. It can be, this fat can be very stubborn and very difficult to deal with, so to speak. And it's not, we used to think of visceral fat as kind of just the lubricant or the cushion that kind of cushions an internal organ, and it was just kind of there to cushion our organs. But it was discovered that no, it's actually very hormonally active, and it secretes all sorts of inflammatory adipokines and other kinds of cytokines. And like Adam was talking about, there definitely seems to be a big link between visceral adipose and metabolic health, probably more so than subcutaneous. Your subcutaneous is the stuff you can actually grab on the outside. So it's actually thought that visceral fat is a better indicator in many ways.
I do want to plug in here as well as that we are primarily trying to support a study in longevity to extend healthy life years, but this study is only a year long. If we had the funding and the time and the capabilities, it would be a hoot to do a study for 15, 20 years. But this is, something that we can easily, with the systems in place, measure virtually, that's not terribly invasive, that has enough scientific evidence that should promote reduction in inflammatory markers and reduction of risk of developing chronic conditions that would impact healthy life years. So it is kind of like, we're placing a bet on this endpoint that itself has a lot of evidence to support that it's worth reducing. But I do want to tie that to a discussion, and Adam and Dr. Zalzala, it'd be great to get your perspectives that this study that we also are doing is collecting blood, and we're testing safety endpoints like LDL, very low density lipoproteins, cholesterol levels, lipid panels, metabolic profiles. But if we see a reduction in weight loss, you can think about the stores of fat sinking, being subcutaneous or visceral. And that fat and cholesterol normally stored in a sink of fatty tissue has nowhere to go but the bloodstream. So causing a rise inadvertently in cholesterol. And the effect is not permanent, and the cholesterol levels will drop as the weight stabilizes. But being able to compare, a year-long study of that weight loss shifting tied to Dexafit, I think gives us ability to mute out some of that noise. But Dr. Z and Adam, is there anything else you want to add to that, why we're using this beyond just the safety data itself?
I think that's a great point you made. That's one of the things we advise people is what makes visceral fat, along with, it's not related to this discussion, but VO2 max as well. They're two metrics that have a lot of evidence behind them of their correlation to disease risk, mortality, but more importantly, they're not something you can artificially reduce, to look good. I only say this because back when I was an athlete in college, we were penalized if we were above a certain threshold of body fat, and we used a bod pod. And there are ways you can game a bod pod to affect it. And it was a way for us to do that. Visceral fat is not something, when you get a DEXA scan, it's gonna, as Dr. Z had mentioned earlier, it's a very stubborn fat, meaning you need to make sure you're dialing in your diet, your lifestyle, or whatever you might be doing to try to optimize yourself. If that visceral fat changes, that means you did something positive to reduce that. So it helps eliminate that noise that Carla mentioned.
Thank you.
And Patrick, thank you so much for your question. If anyone else has anything to query, feel free to put it into the chat, or just go ahead and unmute yourself and plug in with your response. So far we've kind of covered why we're using the Dexafit system, a bit about the technology itself, and why measuring visceral fat is so important. But if we start thinking about bone density and using bone density as a metric of aging, Adam, can you kind of dive into the values of looking into that as an endpoint as well?
Well, they call osteoporosis a silent disease. Affects, I think, last I checked, over 200 million worldwide. And it's something, just understanding your fracture risk, just how likely, especially as you age, your likelihood of fracture leads to mortality. And it's also understanding how do you improve your skeletal health. There's a number of factors. I'll let Dr. Z can elaborate more on that piece, but I will say that understanding your body composition health, your lean mass specifically, the more lean mass you carry, the less you're losing as you age, the less likely it is it's going to lead to a fracture that could lead to an adverse health outcome. So understanding that your skeletal health, your bone density, it's becoming, there's more and more awareness to its value. So understanding your disease risk and your longevity, especially since we're finding younger and younger people are having bone density issues than they had previously.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not gonna expect to see any changes over the 6 to 12 months that we're looking at our study. I mean, typically, bone turns over, it gets lost very slowly, and it gets gained very slowly. But with that said, we could be a surprise, and potentially see a change in bone density. Now the body composition, do you want to talk a little bit about what the difference between the score that you get from the body composition versus what you would get from like a diagnostic bone density?
Yeah, so the difference between going in for a DexaFit scan for your body composition assessment versus just going through your doctor and recommending a bone density scan, he'll mostly look at your T-score, different scores to identify your risk level. On the Dexafit side, we're providing you everything from, as we said earlier, your lean mass, your fat mass, your bone mass for each region of your body. So you get a heat map of your body that's color-coded, that's showing exactly where you're storing your lean, fat, and bone. Beyond that, at Dexafit, we provide what we call our body score. So the body score is meant to replace just looking at total body fat percent, which is what most people gravitate towards just because that's what they've always been told to look at. The body score is just like a simple letter grade. And what we're doing with the body score is we're looking at all those components that I mentioned earlier that mean more for your health, from visceral fat to your skeletal health, any asymmetries, your lean mass, how much you're carrying, relative to what should be healthy. And so by looking at that score, when you see the body score change in a positive direction, you've done something to change your body, your body composition in a healthy way.
Yeah, so Adam, I know you can't see our screen, but I pulled up actually a sample report from Dexafit. So the report that patients get printed out. So I use this to kind of show people. So I'm gonna just go through it real quick here to kind of see what you would expect if you do end up getting a Dexa scan from, body composition scan from a Dexafit. Now, like Anna mentioned, I mean, there are other places around the country that do provide body composition, but the report will look different because this report's kind of proprietary to Dexafit. But basically, I mean, it would show you, it shows you kind of fat versus lean, and kind of gives you a trend. It kind of tells you also kind of tells you what your visceral fat is over time. So this particular person, they started out with a visceral fat of 3.13 pounds, and they were able to drop that to 2.8. So we're hoping to see, a similar or even better change when we do the rapamycin trial. I can't remember what this individual was their intervention was. I think it was like a ketogenic diet or something, if I recall off the top of my head. But this kind of gives you an idea of what, like I said, what the report will generate in terms of like the distribution of the lean muscle and the fat muscle, and then kind of an analysis over time if you do serial testing.
I can show you, Dr. Z, I might be able to, since I'm on my phone, I could probably show you the mobile app.
Yeah, absolutely. So that scoring. Yeah, let me just finish this, and then absolutely, I'd love for you to show the app.
Okay.
But I'm just on page 2 of the report, you'll see like the trend in visceral adipose tissue. I think this particular, if I remember off the top of my head, this person went a ketogenic diet, and then I think they just kind of went back to a more moderate diet. And then in terms of the bone density, you'll get a T and Z score, but it'll be a cumulative or a kind of whole body. So I was told this is like plus or minus 20% from what you'll see on a diagnostic bone density. So this is more to be used for informational purposes, not for diagnosis. I mean, obviously, if you're up here in the green, then chances are really good that you're not going to be osteoporotic. But again, this is not. There are very specific things that are measured with a standard body composition, sorry, a bone density, not a body composition. So this does give you kind of a cumulative score, like a total body bone density. But when they look at it, when you look at it from a BMD scan, you look at the spine and the hip, and so it's a little bit different. But so when patients, participants do go for a body composition, you will get a T and Z score, but it's for the total. So it may or may not completely correlate with the diagnostic one. And then it just, there's a little bit more to the report, but I think the app that Adam's going to show here is very interesting. So I'm going to hand it over to him.
While Adam pulls it up, everyone, thank you so much for the questions that you've been submitting into the chat. I think I've answered most of them on the chat thread as well, but if you have anything that needs to be further explained, I'm happy to set aside some time in the last 15 minutes for us to cover that as well.
Also, while Adam's pulling that up, have we updated our team on the fundraising campaign? Have we made any? We haven't mentioned the fundraising campaign in our webinars yet, have we?
Oh, I don't believe we have. We can
No?
double dip this one.
Yeah. So I wanted to thank everybody for their support for our fundraising campaign. It was wildly successful. We had we exceeded our goals, and we couldn't have done this without the help of everybody out there. And I also wanted to especially show appreciation to the crew at Leaf and Lifespan.io. Without them, it would have been very difficult to do the fundraising campaign. With that said, we're still open to donations. We'll probably be open for donations for the rest of the month through Lifespan. The more we raise, the more we can do. If anybody's interested, please contact us. We'll be more than happy to accept donations and put it to good work, put it to good use for our study.
And as well as helping plan for the success of the follow-through of Pearl, which is the large study that this is a pilot for. So always looking to plan for the future as well. So thanks, Dr. Zalzala. And Adam, we can see your screen now.
Is my screen shown?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I'll just breeze through this quickly since it's going to cover a lot of what Dr. Z showed you earlier. Just a little bit more of a user-friendly interface. That's one of the pain points over the years working with facilities that were offering this type of testing is you were at the mercy of the software from the manufacturer, which was not the most visually pleasing or intuitive to follow. So we developed our Dexafit AI mobile app, integrates with iOS. It's available on iOS and Android. And so this is the beginning of the body comp view. We start with the body score. Your history over time, what your target could be, and they have what are called our factors. So this just gives you a quick high-level synopsis of where is my body fat percent? Am I in a safe zone, best zone, high risk zone? What is my target, my lean mass as well? What zone am I in? Lean mass, best, high risk mass, T4. Tells you a little bit about what your body score means. More importantly, you can learn more as you up. You can see how you're trending over time and what your goal should be. It tells you what visceral fat is, just in case you forget. When your scan tells you about it, you forget when you leave. They also are off and on to. So obviously, I want to go to 0. I'm going to save that. I knew. You have that there.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but you're choppy a little bit. Do you have a place? Do you have a place with better reception or better signal? Oh, did we lose him?
Oh, I think.
Oh, hello.
Oh,
sorry, Adam. I was going to say. I mean, you're a bit choppy there. Yeah, you're a bit choppy there. Is there is there some way you can boost your signal or find a better better location?
I'll try to boost real quick. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I think one of the great things about this study is that we're going to have about 200 participants. Even if we neglect the use of rapamycin, that will be having gone through the Dexafit system to be kind of a great data asset to be able to think about how to use this for other studies, let alone to see a dose response for the multiple treatment arms that we have for the Pearl study. So kind of a very powerful tool set that one will be able to mine for more data, and even to help other folks realize how to use it for their own patient journeys or healthcare journeys on the long term outside of the Pearl study.
Am I back? Better quality?
Yep, we see your screen.
Okay. Did you see where I cut off last time? You're able to change targets, set your goals, it saves that for you.
No, I think we missed the change goals part.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you'll be able to, if you want to, hold on, I gotta move that little screen there. You pull up under one of your score factors here. As I showed you earlier, it shows you exactly the factors that make up your body score and where you fall. Safe, best, or high risk are our 3 categories, just to show you, quickly you can see, all right, how am I doing? From there, you can pull up, you can learn more. We've got definitions about each region in case you forget during your appointment. Change your target. Obviously, I want my goal to be 0 for visceral fat. It also allows you to adjust your body fat percent, your total weight, whatever it may be. You can set that up. From there, we'll move on. We'll go to our body fat. Total body fat percent, 17.7. You see how you compare to an optimal range. You can see how you compare to your peer group as well. Learn more about why that's important. We break it down by region. So here you're able to look at your left versus right. This is the torso here. Again, you can compare how to your peer group, our arms as well, peer group, symmetry, legs. It'll be the same views for your lean mass. So you can see how that's all changing. Our belly fat, this is the visceral fat we talked about earlier. Identify where you are. See how you compare to your peer group. Your AG ratio, this is your android over gynoid. Android is in the trunk region. The gynoid is in the hips. Women will typically carry more fat in the gynoid region. The goal is to be as close to be below 1, ideally between 0.6 and 0.8 for your AG ratio. And beyond that, we look at your skeletal health. So you can see your T-score and how likely it is that you might run into some bone density issues. So that's just a quick quick look at the body composition piece.
Now, I had a question, Adam. Now, if somebody were able to do a body composition at another facility, how likely or how possible would it be for them to be able to maybe import their data to be on the Dexafit app, for example? Do you have that capability?
Yeah, we're about to have that capability here relatively soon. So that's something where if anybody wishes to have their data imported into our platform, to let us know, and we can do it on a case by case to start until we have it universal.
Got it. Okay, that's good to hear. I mean, for our purposes as well as to make sure we have kind of uniformity of the data.
Yep.
Now, I know there's two major manufacturers, GE and Hologic. I mean, is there any difference whether somebody goes for a body composition on one type of scanner versus the other?
No, both are great systems. We're integrated with both GE and Hologic systems. The important thing to remember when you do it is try to be on the same system when you go back for a follow-up.
Yeah, so ideally the same location you went for your baseline, you should go for your follow-ups as well on the same exact scanner if at all possible.
Ideally, yes, especially at least the same type of GE system or the same type of Hologic system. Ideally, the same exact system. And while not necessarily critical, we encourage you to go around the same time you did before. We just encourage you to control as many variables that you can control. Try to keep those consistent between tests. Don't do a crazy workout in the morning and then go get a scan while you're dehydrated and haven't eaten, and then do a follow-up scan after you're back from vacation where you're just eating, and do it late at night after you eat dinner and drink or anything like that. So we want to try to ensure there's consistency in terms of your own protocol that you're going to follow between your baseline and follow-up.
Perfect. All right. Is there anything else you wanted to add about Dexafit or the involvement in the trial?
No, we're very excited to be a part of it and to help out how we can and see how things progress.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Dr. Z. Thanks, Carlo.
All right. Now I think a few questions have come in. I also want to kind of take a moment to acknowledge the participants that we currently have enrolled. We're very pleased with the amount of people who've been interested. Carlo and his research team have been hard at work trying to move everybody through the pipeline. We have pretty big ambitions for the trial, so there's a lot of steps involved. So for those who have signed up, I know it can seem like it's taking forever, but just bear with us while we kind of try to make sure we get everybody down the right pipeline. I mean, having a distributed trial solves some problems, but definitely creates many others as well in terms of logistics and things like that. So Carlos and his group has done an outstanding job so far, and like I said, I want to acknowledge them and everybody who's signed up already. If you've filled out the form online on our website, if you fill out the form online, then you've already been added to kind of our pre-screening group. And again, just be patient with us while we kind of move all the people through pre-screening to screening to consent, and then through the rest of the pipeline.
Thank you, Dr. Z, for the accolades and also the appreciation for the participants, which are part of the funding strategy and engagement for the study. I think one of the greatest things about working on a virtual trial is we're setting up the frameworks to start researching products beyond just rapamycin, but this is kind of one of the best examples I've seen of a crowd-led, engaged, and contributing factors for a study. So I do have a couple of things I want to get to, but I want to clear out some of these questions I've seen. For when will the study begin? We are already having folks staged in order to receive the treatment arm, since we do have a placebo, a couple of different dosages, and different timings of when to take the treatment. Once we have a large enough batch of folks that have been completely consented and enrolled, we'll then have them have the treatment shipped to their house that they'll be randomized into. We'll have them go to a Dexafit location to get that initial baseline scan. And we're also going to request folks to get that first baseline blood draw once they've been enrolled and insured into the study. There was a question around using blood work at Quest or LabCorp for the blood draws. And for the second week and fourth week of the study, we will request that you go to a Quest diagnostics location. For the baseline assessment, as well as additional time points across the entire year, we would actually need to have a mobile phlebotomist or route you to a laboratory that we can get them to process some blood samples and send it to our biobank, which we can work on an individual basis, figure out where those locations are. But Quest and LabCorp isn't a site that is capable of collecting those bloods and sending it to our biobank as well for how we have the study set up. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, so just a little bit about the biobanking, why it's important. I mean, first of all, from a funds perspective, I mean, if we had unlimited funds, we could do unlimited testing. But the reality is, we have to be very frugal with our funds and very particular about what tests we do, we offer and we run. So the idea of biobanking, it kind of gives us more time and more thought and more opportunities to do further testing, better testing on the bank samples. It also provides the opportunity for, if somebody were to create an assay of some sort down the line, we could, there are different assays and different tests being evaluated and created all the time. It would allow us to kind of pull samples from the bank and send to a research university or something like that. So that's the other importance of it. And there are a lot of tests that we want to test for that Quest and LabCorp just don't do, and we need that bank blood in order to do a lot of the specialty tests that we're looking to offer.
And also, one of the benefits of developing a biobank is that we can batch these samples and have them all tested within a very close time frame, which helps reduce variance and noise from the techniques we're utilizing to measure the very difficult to see biomarkers and things found in blood cells, things found in the serum, things found in the plasma, which are all due to effects of change from temperature to thawing to freezing to shipping. So by batching them all together, it helps reduce some of that noise on top of that.
It also allows us to be selective, meaning that we may not necessarily need to do like a certain metabolic tests for all participants. We could select a subset from the biobank, test it, see if there's anything that shows up that's interesting, and then choose whether or not we want to send the entire cohort or not. So that's another advantage, is it allows us to be a lot more economical as well with our data.
And I think it even leads to being able to design a more robust, larger study to say, oh, I wonder if this signal is useful for when we have 1,000 people ready to go for the larger Pearl study. We can go ahead and do a very small experiment on the biobank and see would it be worth seeing in a larger study for rapamycin or really any product impacting the mTOR pathway, say metformin, for example. So scrolling down, I see that one of my research associates has answered the question as well. So thank you for plugging that in around getting access to our project calendar to meet with one of our research associates. If you haven't received any of our outbound messages or queries, feel free to contact the research at AgelessRx inbox to make sure that something's not ending up in your spam or those promotional folders or those other ones that kind of get flagged by Gmail if you utilize that system. Dr. Z, I was wondering if you wanted to add to the question on everolimus or RTV101. I'm familiar with it as an anti-neoplastic agent in oncology, so I can speak to the safety profile compared to sirolimus, but I was wondering if you can kind of touch on why we chose rapamycin versus this other analog.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think RTV101 is a different drug altogether. I don't think it actually has a generic or a brand name. So I think if I'm not mistaken, I think they're different molecules. First of all, RTV101 was being studied by the name of the company is escaping me, Joan Manick's Restore Bio, I believe. But I think it's a different drug altogether. I mean, the reason why we chose sirolimus or rapamycin is because it's kind of the original molecule. It's the molecule that was extracted from Easter Island. Bacteria from Easter Island. It's the molecule that seems to have been studied more extensively in all sorts of organisms. Could there be potential benefits to using other rapalogs? Maybe, but we felt it was best to start with the original molecule and go from there.
And I think that from a safety perspective, since we are doing a virtual trial, there was a bit more evidence on the potential adverse events that we can monitor remotely for rapamycin versus the other products. You really should be getting oversights and screenings on a constant basis by a primary care provider that can do a bit more than what we can do with non-invasive techniques, especially if things do present poorly from taking off-label products.
Sure. Plus, sirolimus has been around a lot longer. A lot more is known in terms of its safety profile and things like that. And so it was a more natural fit for us. And that kind of ties into, there was another question on here in terms of the source. So we're actually using a compounding pharmacy, and they go through testing and things like that. I don't know who the original manufacturer is for it, but I believe the compounding pharmacy gets the bulk materials from one of the approved compounding associations. I think the PCCA, if I'm not mistaken. And they're custom compounding it for us. Even though rapamycin or sirolimus is available commercially, there's several reasons why we wanted to compound it. One is, it makes it a little easier for placebo if we're dealing with a compounded medication. The other is cost. Compounding it is a little bit more cost effective than the commercially available tablets. And then the other is from a practical perspective, most people who, the few doctors out there who might be prescribing rapamycin off-label for longevity, and there's not very many of them, seem to be gravitating towards compounded. And so it seems like if we are going to ever offer rapamycin, on our telemedicine platform, the more natural fit is to do it compounded.
And on the last webinar that we hosted, we spent an hour-long discussion with Dr. Swadan, who is leading that effort, and also I think is the lead pharmacist over at Pharmacy Solutions. So there's a large discussion around the benefits of compounding, especially from a trial, as well as sourcing it directly, getting it tested for quality control, as opposed to getting it directly from some source like Alibaba or from a larger, less controlled pipeline. So I provided the link to that webinar just on the chat as well, and these links will be provided after this discussion on top of that. Just above where I had put the research inbox and the YouTube link, Varsha, thank you so much for providing this, is a link to the trial participant interest form that we use as an initial screen that kind of gives us where your location is, to make sure that we at least can route you to a DexaFit system, and we can have those mobile phlebotomist or laboratory collect that blood sample, and gives us a very minimum amount of information to know if you can at least be qualified for the study from a geographical and from age as well. So that should answer some of these questions. And if you sign up, can you start later this year? I would say that there is a window period of 3 to 4 to 5 months, depending on how quickly we hit the recruitment goal for the Pearl study. So if you give us some timeline of, if you have an upcoming surgery or travel that you want to plan around, we can be somewhat flexible to enrolling, putting you into a freeze, and then actually having you do the first steps of processing to be part of the study. I don't think I missed any other questions that I've seen on the chat, because I've been scrolling around quite a bit.
Yeah. There was a question like early on, I think Lisa had asked about being able to access an actual Dexafit location. We kind of touched on this during the talk with Adam, but there are other places out there where you can get a body composition test, and so as long as it's compatible with our with what we're looking for, then really any Dexa body composition scan should suffice. We can take the raw data and import it. Finding a body composition scanner can be a little bit of a challenge, but just reach out to our team. We have some directories we can pull. There's also some tips and tricks that I've learned in terms of where to find them. Like, for example, universities, a lot of time their sports science department will have it. I'm not sure if they're open to public. Hospitals tend to have the DEXA scan with body composition, especially if they have a bariatric center attached. Professional sports teams, again, but I don't know how accessible that is to the public. So there's typically some places where you can go. You can inquire to see if there's a local DEXA scan with the body composition software.
So the question I had, I sent an email to my primary care and they said the only issue would be, I don't believe we can coordinate payment through the study. If the test would not be filed through your insurance, then let me know. We'll have to check with management to see if we can coordinate the study test here. So they have a DEXA scan right there at Centera, Norfolk at the dedicated care center. And I'm going to put them in touch with you guys through that email you gave me, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, there's really no insurance coverage for a body composition scan. And this is across the board. I mean, even through a hospital DEXA scan and things like that, patients are paying out of pocket. I think there may not be proper CPT codes and things like that for body composition. But hey, if you can figure out a way to get it done, and get that covered, through your doctor, we'll gladly take that data. More power to you.
What's the typical cost? Do you know?
I've seen it range from anywhere from, $99 at a Dexafit to $250 at like a university or hospital. So it does vary, from place to place. Some maybe smaller. There are some private clinics that do offer Dexa, and sometimes they'll have it on sale for like $79 or something like that. But that's about the lowest that I've seen it.
Okay, so you could work with us if we can find a location locally.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I believe Carlo, we are including the DEXA scan as part of the. Are we including it as part of the initial enrollment? Okay.
Yeah, the problem is I'm in Virginia, and you
Yeah.
didn't have a location in Virginia.
Right. That is, Dexafit is the largest, but they're still relatively new and relatively small in terms of their footprint. I think they have about 25 locations around the country. So apologies for those who don't live within driving distance. But again, that's why we've kind of come up with this alternative to try to export or import the data from other scanners.
I'm with Lisa on this idea of a road trip, but just as a heads up, if you are going to a system that isn't under the Dexafit brand or those locations that we're routing folks to as a primary site, part of the patient contribution of funds is to cover some of the Dexafit costs. So if you do have to go to another site, we'll just have to work with you individually to make sure that, if you're having to pay out of pocket, we either reduce the cost of your next month or we figure out how to make it manageable, since part of the participant contribution is to cover the testing and Dexafit itself. So we can work around that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. And then we have a couple other questions here. I think somebody's having a partial knee replacement. It's possible that rapamycin may delay wound healing. And so anybody who has any kind of scheduled surgery, we ask that you do the surgery, and then you kind of get a clearance from your surgery that you're completely healed. And that way wound healing will not be an issue. And then also there was a question about ketogenic diet. So in order to, if you're on a ketogenic diet right now, before the study, by all means continue, but we're trying to control for as many variables as possible. So, if you're coming to us on various supplements, various diets, things like that, that's fine. Come as you are. The only exception is metformin. We kind of ask that you stop that for a few months ahead of time before you start the rapamycin. But otherwise, kind of come as you are, but we ask that participants don't try anything radically new. during the trial, because that'll obviously throw off our data. I mean, if you all of a sudden, start the ketogenic diet at the same time as the rapamycin, and we see some unusual readings, we won't know what to attribute that to. So, so we've decided not to exclude any other, like I said, other than metformin and a few other exclusions, in terms of like supplements and diets and things like that. Again, for the most part, come as you are. When in doubt, you can ask us during the intake and we'll let you know.
On the question on participants contributing to the gut microbiome and DNA methylation test, this is also somewhat of a mixed bag where some of your contributing fund is going to cover the cost of those tests across your monthly contributions. And on top of that, we are subsidizing costs from the ageless coffers. And we've been very fortunate that some of the vendors, particularly the one with the methylation testing, is actually subsidizing the costs and providing some of these to a limit for free. Well, part of the partnership of providing the access to the data for the study. So it is kind of, it's everyone's putting some money into the pot for some of these tests, but primarily participants are paying for blood, helping us get banking in place, DexaFit, and if there's leftover funding, which there isn't much on top of that, to go into the additional ancillary tests that are the much more interesting biologically ones for aging. Dr.
No, I was just say, that, just to kind of clarify, we've kind of built all that into the kind of the flat fee that we've come up with. So, so can you talk a little bit about that structure?
Yeah, so the monthly contribution is $120 a month for participants, and to enroll to the study, you'll be requested to pay for the first 3 months of the study. So with that, we'll be able to use that to collect the first handful of tests where we have the most collections within the first month, baseline, week number 2, week number 4, and then we start collecting them at lower frequencies throughout the rest of the year. So it's helping to supplement and buffer that cost that we'll potentially be able to recover throughout collecting that monthly contribution throughout the rest of the year. And we'll renew that cost monthly contribution every 3 months for those participating in the study. That's also tied to us shipping 3-month supplies of the rapamycin. Well, the treatment arm that you are randomized into will be sent to your location as well. So that's kind of how we're timing the monthly contributions, as well as $120 for 12 months to participate into the Pearl study.
Now, just to be clear, the value that we're providing, we're trying to go well beyond that. With all the testing and things like that, all that we'll be able to we're hoping to be able to do on participants. The participants will have access to a lot of these advanced testing that we hope to be able to do. So that's a big bonus for participants. Is like I said, access to the test, and I think we anticipate that just the testing alone will probably be somewhere in the range of about $3,000 per participant when all is said and done. So that's kind of a bonus in terms of what participants will benefit from this. In addition to, obviously, if they end up on rapamycin, and if they don't end up on rapamycin, we're pledging that they get the next, when we go into phase 2, they'll kind of get first dibs at phase 2 without having to without any additional charge.
On these methylation tests, do you factor in the knowledge of being genetic SNPs for MTHFR, C677T?
Well, that's not quite how the methylation testing works. The methylation test does not really look at directly at SNPs. It looks at the methylation patterns between the C and the Gs. In the cytosine and guanosine. Sorry, it's been a while since I've taken that basic biology. But yeah, so it doesn't really. It's kind of agnostic. Guanine, thank you. It's kind of agnostic to like the various different SNPs and things like that. Now, can those indirectly factor? Potentially. Yeah, potentially it could. But then that kind of goes into a larger debate about those SNPs affecting the aging process, and then whether or not we can actually modify those using things like rapamycin.
We do have the ability to, and we've been considering this for the larger study, to get folks that have done anything like a 23andMe that they have somewhat of a haplotype of, you know, a
Got
handful
all
of
of that.
steps.
That's why I was asking. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that you know, that information could potentially be useful. I mean, I suspect a lot of our participants would have had 23andMe testing done. And the nice thing about 23andMe is you can ask for the raw data, and that maybe at some point we could analyze that as well.
Already done that. Uploaded to LiveWello. Got all the
Yeah,
data, all
nice,
the stuff,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'd be looking at it from a different perspective, maybe from you know, if we see certain patterns, we might be able to correlate that. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, the amount of data extraction and the data analysis just kind of really hurts my head here. I'm glad I'm not a data scientist. I'll stick to being a, you know, a clinician. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of data we still have to crunch, and, you know, a lot of that'll come, you know, after we're completed the study as well.
We are at time, and I'll go ahead and follow up with any questions that we have gotten to through that Q&A section of the follow-up for the webinar recording. Everyone, thank you so much for participating. Feel free to reach out to that research inbox or fill that form if you haven't been contacted around screening and getting enrolled into the study.
Yeah.
And you'll be hearing from us very, very soon.
And then also, you know, the recordings for these will be posted on our AgelessRx/Pearl website, the link that I put there, and the link to the form as well is there, and other information. So, you know, so if you know anybody who missed this, you know, we have a link to the last 2 webinars, plus shortly we'll have this webinar on there as well.
This is exciting, guys. Thanks for what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Have a nice day.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye now.
Ciao.